Hello, hello, and welcome to the show. It is such a treat to be here with all of you. Happy Wednesday. We're in the first week of December, and this is going to be a pretty interesting month. I'm looking forward to having more discussions with you. But for those of you who are joining me on the replay, happy replay day to you as well. We're live here. I'm excited to welcome you to today's live level up conversation.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun. Market updates. Award-winning financial pro. Get ready. I present to you Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Hello, friends. Wow, I already see Joshua joining us on YouTube Live. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Winnie Sun, your host, Forbes contributor, CNBC council member, and award-winning financial pro, here to keep you on top of all things trending, relevant business news, and what makes our show so special. And why I love being here with each of you is because we're going to be monitoring different discussions that you're having. When you share comments, we're going to see them, and we're going to be sharing audience feedback throughout our different community moments, which makes it so fun. It's live TV, right? And of course, today we have a very special guest. For you, it'll be a guest. For me, a very good friend. And he is so incredible and just such a great human being. You're going to be in for a treat. He is also Chief Human Resources Officer at Aflac Inc. For those of you, when I say Aflac, don't you just have to smile? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? The Aflac duck. In fact, I have a little friend here joining me. I haven't named my Aflac duck yet. If you have any name suggestions, of course, share them in comments. Don't be shy. We can't have my duck here with no name, right? I'd love to find out what I should name my duck. And hello, Vicky Garvey, joining us also on YouTube Live. What a treat to have you joining us. It is so great to see all of you. Sadiq joining us also. Hello, Sadiq. On YouTube, I know you're joining us from Florida today. Are you joining us from Florida? Let me know where you're joining me from. Always a treat to have all of you here with me. Now, let's start and talk about how the market closed, because that's how we do it here. The Dow closed up a whopping 1.5 points. That's right. I mean, don't give it the whole 2 points. Close up 1.5. NASDAQ down 7 points. The S&P 500 also down 56 points. Now, did you think that the market would actually do a little bit better today, or bigger volatility, maybe on either positive or negative? Because I certainly do. And perhaps later this week, we'll see more activity because the COVID policies in China have just been relaxed. This has just been announced today. And of course, this is big news because this could begin a sustained growth rebound, not only here in the United States, but across the globe. We're learning that they're going to be introducing new wide-ranging relaxations in their COVID policies. This is from the China State Council. This is their announcement. Now, this could include the possibility of home quarantine for residents in China, as well as the dropping of test requirements for some public places. Can you believe that? Certainly something that we don't experience here in the United States in public places. We don't have testing for that. But of course, they are part of our robust global economy, and we heavily are impacted with our neighboring different countries. And so the decisions that are made on the international front can certainly have an impact on our financial markets here in the United States. As these decisions will often impact things such as the financial markets, the price of things that you and I buy, and of course, inflation as well. I know, the big I word. But as we're closing on up to employee benefits season as well, I want to segue over to some news in that area. And this is, of course, probably a little bit more, doesn't quite impact us so much, but still interesting to read. And this is actually trending on many platforms, including, of course, Twitter. For those of you who were on Twitter with me earlier and part of our hashtag Winnie Sun tweet chat, it was such an incredible tweet chat. I hope you enjoyed it. And for those of you who weren't part of our live discussion, I want to invite you to jump on Twitter, do a quick search for hashtag Winnie Sun so you can see today's conversation, a very important topic on mental health and employee benefits and all things employer-employee. So if you didn't get a chance, jump in there. You can add your comments and reply to our guest panelists, and we would love to see you there as well. But as we come back and talk about employee benefits and enrollment season, something that happened in the news today. I don't know if you saw this, but this was actually pretty interesting. In fact, Twitter was in the news about the new change at their headquarters location in San Francisco. All right. Is this the definition of work from home? Is there a new Twitter definition of work from home? Because Twitter, who is now under the leadership of the one and only Elon Musk, has laid off a significant number of their employees and get this, recycling this newfound extra space into, I feel like there should be a drum roll. Well, the space is turning into places where people can rest, literally. In fact, Twitter has reportedly decided to turn some of their empty office spaces into bedrooms. So, San Francisco isn't too keen on this, from what I read. So, officials in San Francisco are saying that they have confirmed they're going to put together an investigation of, whether this is okay or not okay. The bedrooms are investigation because I guess they're, is this acceptable? But supposedly, what's interesting is they're not actually they're decorated. Well, I thought decoration was good, but they're decorated with neon orange carpet. So is Twitter gonna go orange? I don't know. But neon orange carpet, curtains, bedside tables, and they even have like these large monitors, teleconference monitors within these new Twitter bedrooms that, by the way, are orange. We really got to talk about that because Twitter has traditionally been blue. So I don't know about that. But on to better matters. Of course, I want to have you please join me in welcoming back my friend today and our guest on the show. He's, of course, a friend of the show, Matthew Owenby, Aflac's Senior Vice President, Chief HR Officer, who oversees the powerhouse Aflac's global initiatives, including HR and leadership, learning and development teams. Welcome back, Matthew, to the show. I was just telling a friend of mine that I was looking forward to you coming back on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back. It's so good to see you.
Well, it is such a treat to be here with you. You have any fun plans for the holidays?
I'm going to get some rest and not at work. I'm not going to be taking any naps at work or sleeping at work. I prefer to do all my sleeping at home.
Well, that's good to hear. I guess Aflac's not converting your office into a bedroom.
No, ma'am, not yet. No.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to talk about something that I've been studying and doing some research on, and that's the Aflac Workforces Report. And I found this to be fascinating. So I'm really glad that you're here to talk to us about that. This was something that you've done before. How did this report come to be?
We have been doing this report, Winnie, probably for at least 8 years, perhaps even longer. And the reason we do this report is to provide additional support to small businesses across the United States that can benefit from the information that we gather as a healthcare insurance provider. And essentially what we're trying to do is inform those people who offer or are interested in offering medical or healthcare benefits to their employees, basically what we're hearing from employees directly. We like to balance both the employee voice as well as what employers think. So as we talk today, I'm going to give you both the employer view and the employee view. And sometimes they contradict each other, which I think will help make our conversation more interesting.
Well, I would love to hear this. I love to hear this. This is so interesting because we've gone through some pretty interesting, like last 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to see if some of this has come into the report. Let me ask you this, Matthew. What has surprised you most about the results from this year's study?
Maybe not a surprise, but just a confirmation, because Aflac employs thousands of people across the United States and tens of thousands of people globally. One of the things that we found in the report that we had insight into as a large employer was the amount of mental issues that employees and relations to employees are having across all workforces. So it's clear that people went into the pandemic perhaps mentally on fumes, and the pandemic made it really significantly worse. So in what surprised me around it was how frequent we heard that employees were suffering or struggling with mental health issues.
This is so interesting. I know I had a conversation with a friend of mine who had mentioned this. And, sometimes when you're thinking about open enrollment, you're thinking about medical insurance for you and your family. You're thinking about dental, maybe your health savings account.
Right.
But she was just saying that, she has a teenage son and he was really struggling during the pandemic. And when she wanted to get him therapy and did some research, and I guess he definitely needed help, but
Mhm.
that their medical coverage would cover not a single penny of the
Mhm.
therapy sessions that he needed. And it was like pretty traumatic. And if you think about like an average household
Yeah.
and having children or even spouse and going through what we've gone through, I would think that most people could probably use some sort of mental health support. Um,
Absolutely.
right. And so when Aflac learned this, this was pretty big. Did this spark any new conversations at Aflac?
Well, certainly as an employer, the conversation very quickly became, what can we do to support our employees and the family members that are connected to our employees? And the main thing that employers can do is make it safe to talk about these issues. They're so common and they affect people's performance. They affect people's engagement. They affect their experience at the workplace. So there's really no reason to shy away from it. We need to make it safe to talk about mental health issues at work. And we do need to equip leaders to be on the lookout, particularly as a lot of employers are still allowing remote work. And they don't have that face time that would allow them to see if somebody was struggling more frequently. Of course, we have the video activities and the things like that, but when you're in the office, it's much easier, I think, to identify people that may be struggling. But the main thing employers can do is start a dialogue around mental health issues. And obviously, employers that really want to be best practice, they can offer support features, support structures, counseling, benefits, supplemental insurance policies that cover mental health issues like Aflac offers to ensure that employees are getting the coverage that they need.
And that's so important. And it's so good that, you said like the first step is to have these open conversations. And you're right, a lot of those water cooler discussions that we had when we were all in one place was a lot easier now that we're working remote or hybrid. And we saw that at an earlier tweet chat, which thank you so much for participating and leading with me today, is that people are struggling throughout, even very, very successful people, whether it be the employer or the employee. So this sort of just prioritizing mental health in the workplace is really becoming a non-negotiable. And
It
so I've read that Aflac is now closing in on the gap in healthcare coverage. What does that exactly mean?
Well, really remember that Aflac is not major medical insurance. And essentially, what the gaps are that Aflac covers are the things that your normal health insurance is not designed to cover. And one of the primary features of Aflac is that we pay our policyholders directly. We're not paying providers, we're paying benefits directly to the policyholder, regardless of what major medical pays. So the Aflac insurance approach really does close the gaps that major medical isn't designed to cover in the first place.
I love that. Well, we're getting some comments and some great comments, in fact. And she's joining us, Kathleen, joining from Facebook Live and saying mental health issues are everywhere and must be addressed in the workplace. Couldn't
Agreed.
agree with you more, Kathleen. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And we see Carlos, of course, nodding, also joining us on YouTube Live and loving Half Black plush that I sent over to Carlos last year. Thank you so much, Carlos, for being here with us again.
Thank
And
you.
Christopher is asking on Facebook Live, what are some superior ways to deal with physical and emotional loneliness and depression? I'm going to add in the workplace. I think Christopher, that's a really great question. I don't know that that's something that maybe we are able to talk about. I don't know, Matthew, is that something you're able to talk about right now? I feel like
Yeah,
that's
I'm able to provide my experience and opinion. I'm certainly not a certified mental health professional, but I can tell you some practical things that we do at Aflac as an employer of choice to do. One, we don't let separation become isolation. It is our expectation, even in remote and hybrid working configurations, that leaders are continually reaching out to the people on their team. There should be no days where leaders are not interacting, hopefully as non-virtually as possible, phone calls, video chats, etc., to ensure that people are checked on and they're okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is we want to make sure that people are connected to the organization even outside of their initial teams. We want them to be connected to something bigger than themselves, bigger than the team that they may be on. And the third thing is we want to make sure that we make it safe to talk about issues that may not be work related, but absolutely impact work. So we encourage our leaders to be open and to encourage those types of conversations, because that may be the only interaction that person has throughout the day because of the nature of the configuration of how they're working.
Yeah, it's such a good
We
point.
don't want remote work to become isolation. Separation doesn't need to be isolation, and leaders need to make sure that people don't get isolated.
I love that. Leaders need to make sure. Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, I think that the remote work is certainly something that a lot of employees enjoy and have embraced, and a lot of employers recognize that as well. I mean, just an opinion, do you feel like this is going to continue? Do you think that many companies are going to see their employees working remotely? Is this something that as an employer we really need to start practicing these skills to be able to better connect with our employees?
You know, Winnie, I think we are going to continue to see, what we define as hybrid working, sort of that in the office a few days, out of the office a few days. And I think it benefits both the employer and the employee from a work-life balance perspective. And it gives them the ability to manage their life in a more productive way. I think we will move away from the majority of the workforce being a permanent, never come in type of configuration. I think that was an emergency tactic that we all took, and I think it was effective. I think, we all pulled together to do that, but I think it erodes the culture over time. I think it prevents accidental innovation. It prevents relationships from being stronger. That separation and that isolation, I don't think is healthy to an organization long term. And so I think best companies are going to make the balanced approach, was that hybrid model, not always in, but not always out either.
Not always in on us. That is so true, Matthew. I even seen that with my kids, right? When they were at home doing remote school, now being back in the classroom, just that happiness that you can't discount those human relationships. We are social people. We were
We
never
are.
meant to just stay and isolated, right? Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. It kind of takes me to my next question, which is, when you consult with companies, and obviously Aflac works with many small businesses, what should companies focus on in 2023, in your opinion, to support employee health?
Well, I mean, certainly based upon the research that we did, it's back to that conversation around mental health issues, driving awareness, being open to them, and being willing to put in things, even if they're small things, to address them. We know that employees that are struggling with mental health issues, either directly or indirectly, a mental health issue in their family, are less engaged, they're more distracted, they have more anxiety, and they don't perform as well. And so employers, just like providing a medical benefit or Aflac supplemental benefit policies, ensuring people that have an avenue, that need to have an avenue to engage on mental health issues. Employers, the best employers, are just going to do this well. And, I think they have to make sure that is part of the discussion for 2023. And as employers are thinking about the dynamics of their medical as well as their health insurance coverage, they really need to consider the fact that offering coverages for mental health issues is going to be as important as offering the basic healthcare coverage. It's just an unfortunate side effect of a variety of issues that we've seen in society over the past few years. But I think it's an obligation of employers that want to be the best to ensure that not only are they making it safe to talk about, but they're putting programs in place to address it and to support employees.
love that. It's so important. It wasn't that long ago where really not many people were talking about mental health. And certainly most companies that I work with a lot of clients, and most of them don't have mental health coverage. But then it was actually I heard it for the first time just a few months ago where a good friend of mine, my producer at CNBC, said, Winnie, I'm going to have to connect with you in 2 days because tomorrow I'm taking a mental health day.
Mm.
And that was the first time I had heard it. And I was like, that's brilliant. A mental health day. It's just a day where I just need to recheck. And it's good that we are able to have this and being normalized. Now, I read that Aflac sort of closes the gap in healthcare coverage. We talked a little bit about that, but what exactly does that mean when you say you're closing this gap?
What we're really trying to do is offer insurance for the things that the traditional medical coverage was never designed for, including mental health issues, including accident issues. A lot of people are happy to have the medical coverage, but when they're needing to use the coverage, often it impacts their ability to work. It impacts their ability to do other things. And so Aflac has policies in place to support those needs of employees as they have a medical event that takes them out of the workplace or hits them with an expense that the medical insurance side was never really designed to cover. So Aflac is about closing those gaps that the traditional medical programs were never really designed to cover in the first place.
So Aflac is it basically evolving our employee benefits. I love this. Okay, I'm
Right.
seeing comments coming in. I want to share a comment coming in from Kathleen, and she's saying that employers need to look at the barriers of human flourish, quote unquote, and attack them aggressively to get and retain the best employees. Yes,
Agreed.
Kathleen, absolutely, and just the positive health in the workplace is at the core of creating an environment where people don't just survive but actually flourish. So true. I feel like maybe we should talk to somebody in San Francisco about this. But let's talk about the reality of burnout. This is
Right.
a big reality, right? I
Sure.
know that we've probably heard about this more in the workplace in the last few years more than ever. When you tackle this, I know you do so well at Aflac. What should other employers be doing to be able to deal with their employees' burnout concerns?
Well, I think, counter to the idea of having places to sleep at work, part of the reason why this burnout occurred, Winnie, I believe, is that we took work home permanently. Now, it is not uncommon for me to work here or there on the weekend, kind of as I please when I'm bored with other things. It's a completely different thing, however, during a global pandemic to be surrounded by work all the time and that work is literally right down the hall. Or for a lot of people, work is now the kitchen table that I pass all day long, no matter whether I'm on schedule or not. You're just surrounded in work. And just the fact that that work existed in our homes, which traditionally is a place of break and rest, I think contributed to the burnout numbers that we saw in the survey. I think employers that do this well recognize that you've got to have those mental health days. You've got to encourage people to unplug. You've got to be able to discipline around mobile devices. And when you're away from work, be away from work. It's okay to miss. Very few things are going to go wrong in the 5 or 6, 8 hours you may be away from work. And in fact, that time away is really what reduces that burnout. But I think the fact that work became home and there was this sort of never ending cycle of work, at least for me, work was just right down the hall in my case. It contributes to burnout. It's just always around you. It's a part of your life rather than having those breaks, those physical breaks where for me, when I drive home, that 20-mile commute or so gives me the ability to sort of transition from Matthew Aflac to Matthew home.
I
So
love that you
employers have to encourage those breaks.
Yeah, and I'm so in agreement with you on that. I mean, even just like driving home, right, and listening to your favorite music in the car, that gives you sort of reset, and that's almost like adult therapy, if you will. Well, we got to talk about this in the study. There's also talk about concerns with employees and consumers dealing with inflation.
Right.
In fact, just recently on the show, we talked about how the increase of the Thanksgiving turkey increased by over 71% from last year. So
Mm.
obviously, we're paying a lot more for everything, and that's impacting how we feel about life. So, in your study, did you find interesting information about that? And how are consumers dealing with inflation?
It's a really bad story, frankly, Winnie. I mean, the majority of workers can't pay $1,000 out of pocket expense from a medical procedure. Inflation is infecting gas and household goods, and every part of your household budget has been infected. And my budget's been affected by inflation. It's just yet another thing that is draining kind of that emotional energy out of employees and out of people across the United States. And our survey found that, no surprise, that most Americans cannot pay $1,000 out of pocket expense. And most Americans, almost half of Americans, cannot go more than a month without a paycheck. I mean, these are anxiety inducing activities. Those types of pressures on people contribute to, I think, this emotional lack of well-being approach across the dynamics that we surveyed. It's just yet another issue. Inflation, just yet another issue that's contributing to poor emotional health. It
Yeah,
creates
and
an enormous amount of anxiety.
so much anxiety. You're absolutely right. Especially we're going into the end of the year, you're going to holidays, and then a lot of companies are laying off employees, and if they can't um, financially survive for even a month, talk about the
Right.
pressures that they bring in. They don't have much to celebrate because they're stressed out. This is really, really helpful. And I'm so glad that we're having this discussion, and this is becoming normalized where we can have a productive discussion on this. And for those of you who are watching and you're like, wow, I have commentary on this, but I gotta think about it a little bit. Don't worry. Okay, go ahead and add your comments to our stream here today, of course. And of course, you can check us on Twitter. Do a hashtag search for hashtag Winnie Sun. Matthew shared a lot more information on our tweet chat on this subject as well. And of course, you can reply to him. You can engage with the Aflac Duck on Twitter as well. These are all really fun things to do. Let me ask you this. Matthew, where can people go? Where do we want to send them so they can learn more about things that you talked about today?
I'd love for folks to go on to the aflacworkforcesreport.com. That's aflacworkforcesreport.com. And you'll be able to get a full featured view of all that we've talked about today and more. And hopefully this conversation will inspire employers to start talking about these mental health issues and ensure that they're looking to support people both directly and indirectly, whether it's with Aflac benefits or specific programs, some of the work-life balance things we've talked about, flexible work schedules, encouraging people to take time off, and being okay with the fact that when Matthew and Winnie are off, we're off. Just let people be off. Very few things happen at a large corporation that can't do without Matthew and Winnie for 1 day, 2 weeks, et cetera. And if it can't happen, then there's different issues. So we need to, as employers, encourage people, take that time off, take that weekend off. Don't schedule meetings late in the evenings and on weekends if it can be helped or scheduled. And employers you just have to be more deliberate about mental health issues and emotional well-being because it is affecting our workforce.
It is affecting our workforce. And I want to also throw this out to all of you that are watching as well. Is just don't assume that your employer knows that this exists. Some of them might know there's mental health challenges, but they might not know there are benefits out there that they can look into or research or add to your benefits of offering, or that this information even exists. So often as business owners, they've got a million things to handle. They got to figure out how they're going to give out bonuses at the end of the year and everything else. So be proactive, be an advocate not only for yourself, but also your fellow employees, and bridge that conversation. So I love this. I'm so grateful that Matthew, that you shared this, but you know what? We can't have level up without a fun speed round because absolutely, as you see many of our friends joining us live today watching, this is one of their favorite segments. So are you ready? We're going to put you on the hot seat.
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
Speed round.
Now, Matthew, we've actually had so much of a learning experience from you, learning more about mental health in the workplace and all the great things that Aflac is doing in the research report. But now it's time to put you in the hot seat where we're going to give you about 2 minutes and 2 questions for you to answer. So the first question I have for you is, now we're going to kind of shift the camera torch really into you, Matthew. What do you do to balance work and preserve your own mental health?
Several things. I prioritize my away from work time. So I ensure that the time away from work has activities built involved with it, meaning that whether it's my early morning workout or my evening reading routine, and I'm just disciplined about not allowing work to invade that time. I've not been great about this for my whole career. It's something that I actually got better at during the pandemic, knowing that work was just always there with me because I did have the opportunity to work from home. So it's really about disciplining that time away from work and being deliberate about ensuring that it isn't available for work activities, just like during my work hours is not available for Matthew activities. So I just have the same approach with my away from work time.
I love that. I love that. It's so important. We do that at our workplace too. We always say, vacations means nobody calls you, no more emails you, no more texts you. We got to let you be. My manager once told me at my previous firm, he said, we're not doing brain surgery here. So your time off is your time off. And I remember that and I honor that today as well. All right, Matthew. Thank you so much for that answer. We love it. But we also have the second question is in that we believe, especially everyone that joins us on the show, has their own what we call yes factor. What would you say, Matthew, is your yes factor?
And people will confirm this, that independently, I know exactly what I don't know and I never fake it.
I love that. Well, yet another reason why everyone loves you. I mean, I'm so grateful to have, the second time to spend some time with you today. But I don't know about you, but I just think that this was such a joy to get to know Matthew a little bit better. And as a reminder of other things to do, actually, before I get to that, I want to ask you this, Matthew. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you today, we didn't talk about today that you'd like to share?
Probably just to encourage, we spend a lot of time talking about emotional well-being and mental well-being. And I just think that it's a topic that we have got to continue to focus on and make safe as employers. For employers that are concerned about this, there are a lot of resources out there that they can be educated on. You don't have to become an expert in these issues. We have mental health professionals across the United States that can be easily accessed, as well as providing access to people that are in a lot of cases hurting. And we need to make sure that just as we wouldn't want somebody to be injured, we don't want somebody to be struggling emotionally at work either. And they're the same priority.
I love that. So it's such an important comment. Thank you so much for Matthew for sharing that with us. And thank you so much for being on our show and being so gracious and generous with all this information today. As a reminder, of course, you can find full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun on NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, Roku, Samsung, and many other places. A huge big thank you once again to Matthew for being here on our show. Matthew, I hope that you have a most beautiful holiday season. And of course, we are truly grateful for your time today. And for those of you who are watching it, definitely share this show, tag myself, tag Matthew on it so we can thank you for doing so. We want to get the word out. We want to make sure businesses understand that there's not just a responsibility, but there's an opportunity to make a difference and bridge that connection even further with your employees, because a happy employee force also means a productive workforce. So with that, we thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. And of course, be well. And I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Take care now. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.